Hi again then guys, and welcome to another special projects replica build, and this particular replica is of a car which is visually, at least, a little bit more understated than some of the other builds that we've done. In fact, apart from the rims, you wouldn't really know it was a replica at all. But even in real life, the car that we are replicating doesn't actually look that much different to the normal Viper, and as of course you'll have seen from the title of the video, we are replicating the 2002 shape Viper ACR. The ACR is not a new thing, it's been around for a while. Even this first generation Viper had an ACR version, but it wasn't quite as extreme in comparison to the normal Vipers as the newer ACRs became later, with the crazy wings and the winglets and the intakes and the stripes and all that kind of stuff. Now, as far as the visuals, the actual ACR of this generation has those kind of BBS snowflake rims, and they are essentially the same as the rims that we have on the game, so that's quite handy. Usually we just have to approximate the rims, but on this occasion they are actually very similar to them. So I would recommend those BBS rims. They're a very popular style. I would recommend the standard size, and as far as the paint, of course it's in a grey, as you can see, with no stripes, and that is actually the grey that comes with the car. I personally prefer my Viper of this generation to have no stripes anyway, but most of the ACR models, I believe, if not all of them, don't have stripes anyway, so it's appropriate on this occasion. Now, if you want to have stripes, of course you can go for whatever colour you want, but if you want to opt for no stripes, you've only got three options: yellow, red and grey, because those are the colours that come with the car without the stripes. If you try to repaint it, of course it gives you stripes again. So that's it for the visuals. That's all we've done. That's all you need to do. What though about the mechanical side of things? Well, the changes aren't radical, but they are certainly there. So we'll run through them and then of course take it out to a track, as we always do. Now, this particular build leaves you with a couple of options, as many of my special project replicas do. You can either just go for a straight up replica, which is simpler, or if you want to have it rounded off PP wise, as I have, to 525, then you will need to make some changes, which I've done and which of course I'll show you. Now, without doing the PP changes that I've done, the car sits with the correct specs at, I believe it's 521 PP, if I remember correctly. So it's not ridiculous, it's just nice to have it rounded off if possible. So that's why I opted to do that. Now, I've gone for sports softs because of course it is still a street car. You don't want it to feel too good. Brakes we've left stock for that same reason. As far as suspension, we have dropped the ride height just a little bit, around 10-15mm to 100 front and rear. Springs we've stiffened up, again, not by a huge amount, but up to 7 and 875. Dampers we've got on 3, anti-roll on 2, again, because you don't want the car to feel too much like, say, a full-on GT3 car, or the Team Orica race version, of course. Camber and tow we've got neutral, so unless you specifically want it, you just don't need that. The gearbox, after checking, turns out to be exactly the same as the stock vehicle, so you don't need to do anything there. As far as the diff, I've opted for halfway on initial torque to stiffen up the steering, and then acceleration and braking as low as possible to keep the car in a smooth, under control kind of driving line and driving style. So it depends what you want. As I always say, if you want to change it, feel free to go ahead and do so. Now, as far as power, I do have an oil change, so you need to bear that in mind. Now, as far as the upgrades, this is the part which is down to you, of course, because if you're not bothered about the PP, then all you need to do is just lower the power a little bit on the limiter with an oil change, and then you'll be good to go at 460 horsepower, which is what the real ACR of this generation has. If, though, you want it rounded off, as I have, then of course you'll need to do what I've done, which is the sports computer, manifold, intake tuning, and then reduce the power down, again to 460 horsepower, but in particular 83.7%. Now, as far as the weight, the ACR is a little bit lighter, but again, not as much lighter as the newer ACRs became. So I would recommend window weight reduction, as you can see, and then you'll want to add 3 kilos of ballast, because the actual ACR, according to the specs that I found, weighs 1,562 kilos. So not a huge drop, but a drop nonetheless, and I've opted to put that ballast all the way to the front, but it really makes no difference. It's such a tiny amount of ballast anyway. So it's a pretty simple setup, and even though it is a replica, you do have a couple of options as to what you want to do. Technically speaking, it's more accurate to the car if you don't do the upgrades that I did as far as power. If you just leave it with an oil change and reduce the power, that is more accurate. The car will sound more accurate, it will rev more accurately, etc. So it depends what you want. If you just want it for fun and for the sake of a replica, then I would say just leave it at an oil change. If though you plan to use it for seasonals or for racing as well, which is this setup, in other words, then I'd recommend doing what I've done. So it depends what you need and, of course, what you want. So that's it for the tune. Now let's take it out to a track. Now, as it happens, the Viper is already a pretty good handling car. I would say it certainly doesn't have the handling that you'd expect a vehicle with such a big engine and a lot of power to have. It looks like it would be just a pure hot rod, but that's really not the case. And being the ACR, of course, you want it to be even better around the track, but as I said earlier, not necessarily race car level. And I think overall, that's what I would say I've managed to do with this tune. Is it a little bit too good? Probably. Technically speaking, it is probably a little too good in terms of handling, but that's not a bad problem to have at the end of the day. It's still got a little bit of body roll, a little bit of compression under braking and through corners, which again feels like a road car, looks like a road car the way it sways around, but it's definitely quick around the track and it's a lot of fun. So if you do decide to use this build, obviously I hope you find it fun and of course potentially useful as well for seasonals, for races, etc. But that's it for this particular build, and I'll see you guys next time. And for now, as always, thanks for watching.